Hello and welcome once again to the video. In this one I will be continuing my look at every Grand Prix in the 2025 Formula One World Championship. A championship I've been following for about every single race for the last 43 years. Before that, just intermittent races like the British Grand Prix. Right, my usual routine is to list the finishing order down here, 20 drivers. Then list the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, followed by the top 10, the rundown of the Constructors' Championship. And then I just have a little I won't use the word rant, but a little chat. Well, I suppose I'm chatting with myself to a certain extent, but I voice my thoughts, basically, about the race. Just from a fan's perspective. Okay, so let's dive in. This was, of course, round number 19, USA, from the Circuit of the Americas, COTA, in Austin, Texas. I like to think that's in focus at the moment. I'm pretty sure it probably is. Anyway, yes, one of 3 Grand Prix that are set in the USA this year. I like to think that means it's getting more and more popular in America. It is, but in the early 80s we did have 3 races in America. The USA Grand Prix, the USA West Grand Prix, and the USA East Grand Prix. So it has been attempted before, has been done before. Anyway, I like to think it's taking off big time in America, but we'll see. Better than it has done before. This is a very good circuit. I really like this circuit. The undulations, the ups and downs, the start-finish straight, which is very similar to the Red Bull Ring, former Österreich Ring in Austria. That has that upward climb to the first corner, but this is steeper. I think this one's a steeper uphill climb. Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? Okay, that's my other pen over there. What we have is, in the first place, Verstappen. Are you in focus, Verstappen? You seem pretty focused on the track at the moment, but are you focused on this piece of paper? Yes, I think you are. Okay, second, Norris. Third was Leclerc. Fourth, Hamilton. Fifth, Piastri. Sixth was Russell. Still in focus, I like to think. Still in focus. Keep it up, boys. To remain in focus. Seventh, Tsunoda. Eighth, Hulkenberg. Ninth, Bearman. And 10th was Alonso. And then we had Lawson. Hadjar, Colapinto, Bortoleto, Gasly, and Sainz. Okay, so the rundown in the championship. Drivers' Championship, we have Piastri on 3, 4, 6. Norris there on 3, 3, 2. Verstappen on 3, 0, 6. Russell. 2, 5, 2. Leclerc is on 1, 9, 2. Hamilton is on 1, 4, 2. Antonelli is on 89. Albon 73. Hulkenberg 41. Hadjar 39. Now I'm pretty sure that's still in focus. But it's always best to double check. So, okay, right. So the Constructors' Championship. Of course, we've got McLaren out front. That's a colossal amount, 6, 7, 8. That's amazing. Mercedes. 3, 4, 1. Ferrari. 3, 3, 4. Red Bull 3, 3, 1. And after that we have Williams on 1, 1, 1. After that we have Racing Bull. I refuse to pronounce it with the S on the end because it makes no sense, but I will write the S. There you go. But I will always say Racing Bull. 7. Aston Martin 69. Sauber 59. Haas 48. Alpine on 20. Whoops. Okay, so what did we think of that Grand Prix? What I will say is, just writing down these figures, I think it's amazing that the champion may well be from this team down here. I mean, I know they're all very close together, but look how many points behind Red Bull are from McLaren. And yet, the favourite could well actually be Verstappen now, even though his team is 347 points behind the champions, McLaren. The team have got half the points, less than half the points of the championship, Constructors' Championship winning team, and yet their driver is potentially the favourite to win now. That just goes to show how you need two drivers scoring. Okay, so McLaren have won 12 races. Mercedes have won 2. Ferrari have not won any. And Red Bull have won 5 now, isn't it? Yeah. 5, 17, 19 races, yeah. So Piastri is on 7, Norris 5, Verstappen 5, Russell 2. Fastest lap went to Antonelli. I think he recorded that fastest lap early on as well, early in the race. Unless he did another one later. So what did we think of that race? Well, I like the fact that who is it that actually decides what the tyre compounds are? Because it was C5, C4, C2. So there was, again, it happened earlier in the year. There was a gap in the compounds in an attempt to try and get the drivers to ignore the hard compound tyre and therefore do 2 pit stops. It didn't work in the previous time it was attempted because there was rain. It ended up being a wet race. They attempted it again here. Whoever it is who decides, it can't just be Pirelli, can it? It must be Pirelli alongside the FIA, or I don't know. But anyway, the attempt was made by the authorities, if you like, the powers that be, that there should be a gap between the compounds, between C2 and C4. Because then that means that the C2, is so hard that everyone avoids it and goes medium soft, which means they need 2 pit stops. However, and that's exactly what they did. They did avoid the hard and went medium soft, but that was enough. That was all that was needed. And the softs lasted for ages. It's crazy. Even old softs were lasting for 20 plus laps. I think Piastri's were 25 laps on old soft tyres, used soft tyres, and they still did another 25 laps. And Norris's were pretty much just as long as well, long-lived. It was amazing. And Norris was able to be really fast at the end as well on his used softs, eventually getting past Leclerc and actually ending up closer to Verstappen than he was to Leclerc behind him in the end. So Pirelli are doing this in order to try and encourage 2 stops, but the problem is their compounds are too hard. Even the soft ones are too hard. Maybe they should have gone C6, C5, C1. Well, actually no, because they didn't even, they managed to make the C4. Would they have made the C5 and C4 work? Possibly, yeah. Would they have made C6 and C5 work? Possibly, yeah. So maybe they should do C6, C5, C1. Then definitely you're ruling out the hards, absolutely, because a few did start on hards. You're definitely ruling out the hards. And then it's just the ultra, mega, super, ultra soft, as it used to be called. And the premium, deluxe, mega soft, the C5. So I don't think it was ever called that, but the names did get silly before they trimmed it down to just hard, medium and soft. But yeah, it backfired. It didn't work, basically, that experiment. They'll have to get tougher with that. So the sprint race, the first corner, right? Let's get straight into that, shall we? Now, for starters, what is all this repercussion nonsense from Singapore, eh? And why are the team even making it public? It was Norris that first mentioned it, and the team have sort of, I don't know if the team have officially agreed that there are actual repercussions heading Norris's way, but Norris actually said that the repercussions will affect him for the rest of the season, not just, one race. Now, there don't seem to, I don't know, I haven't heard anything anyway, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are no repercussions for what Piastri did in the sprint race, which would be a little bit odd, wouldn't it? I don't think there should be repercussions for either incident, okay? But because they gave repercussions for a tiny tap from Norris onto Verstappen, which then created a tiny tap from Norris onto, what's his name? Piastri, right? That did not result in taking either driver out. if that leads to repercussions for Norris, then what on earth are they going to do to Oscar when he harpooned Hulkenberg? He did a handbrake turn, harpooned Hulkenberg, and then bounced into Norris and took both of them out, including Alonso, and virtually wiped out Hulkenberg. But yeah, he took both McLarens out. Oh dear, and lost loads of points to Max. And yet Piastri has said after the race, it's just a racing incident, start of the Grand Prix, it's just a racing incident. But he didn't say that. He didn't say that when Norris tapped him in Singapore, did he? Gave him a little nudge. Neither car retired. Neither car had damage. Here, Oscar wiped them both out cleanly at the first corner. But apparently this is just a racing incident. Now, I believe it is. But the problem is, when you class the Singapore one as being serious, then you have to class this one as being mega serious. I think both should be ignored, but they didn't ignore the Singapore one, did they? McLaren decided to act on that afterwards. So, therefore, they have to mega act on this one. Will they, though? I don't know. I can see why there are people that think there is favouritism towards one driver in the McLaren team. The strange thing is that most people think it's towards Norris. I don't think there's any favouritism, but the optics look bad. They did last year as well. The optics looked bad when the team refused to get Oscar to help Lando in the championship until it was too late. The Brazilian sprint race is pretty much the only way that Oscar helped Lando in the end. He just gave him the sprint win. He gave Lando 1 extra point he gave him 8 points instead of 7 for the sprint win. Thank you very much. By then, it was pretty much over the championship. So last year, Jacques Villeneuve himself said that he felt McLaren were desperate to not upset their relatively new signing, Oscar, and that might explain the favouritism which Jacques Villeneuve definitely felt was there towards Oscar last year. So I get totally confused when I see lots of commenting on how McLaren clearly favour Lando. I don't know where those are coming from, unless it's just normal bias. If you're a Piastri fan, you're going to say things like that. Some Piastri fans would anyway. Although people saying that tend to be less so Piastri fans than just people that don't like Lando. And I've mentioned that in my videos before. There seems to be a lot of, not hatred, but a lot of lack of respect, basically, for Lando. It's amazing. This is the same Lando that has outscored Oscar in 7 of the last 9 races, including the last 4 on the trot, and finished 22 seconds ahead of Oscar in this race. That same Lando is the one that is getting no respect and being told, he won't win anything. It's very strange. There's got to be some reason for it. Maybe it's because he bared his heart for all to see, didn't he? Earlier in the season, he does it all the time, but he shows weakness. He shows his weakness by being sort of open and honest about how he feels about things. And a lot of people don't like that. They like the tough, sort of butch, don't give a toss about anyone else type attitude that, say, Max has. That seems to get a lot more respect than the nice approach. I suppose nice guys never win, as the phrase says. Nice guys never win. So unfortunately that loses Lando respect. It doesn't matter what he does on the track. He loses respect. Oscar's having a terrible time at the moment. He had that absolute terrible Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And this one, completely off the pace of Lando the whole race weekend. And that move in the sprint See, that was strange. I mean, even I watched it on Sky, and the Sky commentators were all saying Oscar's not at fault at first, and I was not screaming at the TV, but I was definitely talking to the TV, and saying, "What are you talking about?" That I could see it in live play when that accident happened. It was obvious straight away what Oscar had done. He had jinked across. He had acted as if himself and Lando were the only ones on that part of the circuit at that moment. He jinked across the inside. He did the old switcheroo, which drivers are doing all the time, but not when there are loads of cars around them, at the start of a Grand Prix. And I just think he was so determined to get past Norris at the start. He's always an aggressive starter. I've always said that. But up till now, Oscar has not caused an accident with his aggressive starts, fortunately. But it was only going to happen. It was going to happen eventually. And he did a very aggressive move behind Norris and just drove straight into Nico, who then drove into Alonso. Had Piastri just gone around the outside, which is what his line was, then they would have all gone through the corner comfortably. Nico and Alonso would have finished the race. The McLarens would have probably been second and third. So how does this not lead to repercussions? I don't get it. If it doesn't lead to repercussions, then I'm afraid that is favouritism towards Oscar, even though I hate to say that, because I've always maintained there's never favouritism in these teams. Apart from, if one's clearly way better than the other, then yes, the team will openly support one driver over the other, but it's all out in the open. I don't believe in, if you've got two equal drivers, there's no motivation for them to favour one over the other. But if they don't do repercussions for Oscar, or maybe just cancel the repercussions that are coming Lando's way, that would be a way to do it. I mean, Lando was wiped out by Oscar. Oscar was not wiped out by Lando in Singapore. Very strange. But that was a terrible, terrible mistake by Oscar. But at first, as I say, the Sky commentators were saying, "Oh no, Oscar's not at fault." But then they gradually came round and seemed to begrudgingly acknowledge that Oscar was actually at fault. I don't understand. I mean, and people say that the Sky commentators are biased towards the British drivers. They're not at all biased towards the British drivers. They're mostly ex-Grand Prix drivers themselves. They are not biased towards the British drivers. And this was a clear example of it. They were reticent to put any blame onto Oscar at all. Very strange. But they did come round later, and all of them, to a man and woman, Danica Patrick was actually the most vocal one, saying it was Oscar's fault. The others all gradually came round to it and accepted, yes, it is Oscar's fault. But they seemed to have to watch a number of replays. To me, it was clear just from watching it live that it was Oscar's fault. He just did a handbrake turn into the pack, basically, forgetting they were there. Very strange. So let's see what happens. Oscar saying it was a racing incident is hilarious when he kicked up so much fuss in Singapore when he was tapped by Lando. Anyway, because this has helped Oscar in the championship, right? Of course it has. It was one less race for Norris to take points off Oscar. So it did help. It's not like, we're both wiped out, so it's honours even. No. The guy who's in front of the championship is helped if both drivers retire from a race. It's one less race to worry about for that leader. So he did benefit from taking them both out. I'm not suggesting he did it deliberately, of course, but let's just see what happens. But McLaren have painted themselves into a corner now where they say the drivers are free to race. Yep, absolutely free to race. However, there are loads of rules called papaya rules, and if you break any of those rules, then we have to give you Saturday detention. And that seems to have been what Norris was given. Martin Brundle says that he knows what Norris's repercussions are. He's found out, but he won't say what they are. but he says they're minor and might affect Lando in Las Vegas. So maybe it's to do with some kind. It can't be an update package. Who gets an update package first? Because there are no update packages, I don't think, left for McLaren. So who knows what it is, but hopefully they'll cancel out that ridiculous repercussion now after this, after Piastri does something 10 times worse than what Norris did. But we'll see. Zach Brown initially said he didn't mention Nico Hulkenberg or Fernando Alonso, but he said it's amateur hour at the start of the Grand Prix. And he was referring, I think, mainly to Nico. He was putting all the blame onto Nico. Later, though, to his credit, he took that back and said, actually, I can't put that on Nico. It's not Nico's fault at all. In other words, it's Oscar's fault, although he wouldn't actually say that. But well done, Zach, for redressing that and basically saying it was his driver's fault. A couple of times throughout the race, commentators would refer to a couple of times during the Grand Prix or over the Grand Prix weekend after the sprint race. Sometimes commentators would refer to Norris and Piastri taking each other out. What? It had nothing to do with Norris. And then they would sort of correct themselves and say, well, it's mostly Oscar, isn't it? What do you mean mostly Oscar? Norris was an innocent bystander. He was driving in second place and he got wiped out from behind by his teammate. Oh dear. Now, as I say, I would not expect any repercussions. There shouldn't be any for Oscar, but there has to be because there were repercussions for Norris. You can't kick off at Norris for Singapore and then not say anything to Oscar here. Anyway, I did say I wasn't going to rant, but and then what I hear online is people saying, "Oh, Norris is clearly favoured by the team." What? I don't understand. Don't get it. Don't understand it. Anyway, fantastic performance by Verstappen again. Of course, he does have the car now. But so does Tsunoda. Tsunoda is doing better. The last couple of races, he's done a lot better. And in this one, in the sprint, he came from, was it last up to finish 7th or 8th or something? And here he was well down the grid as well, and he came back to finish 7th. So really good fighting performance by Tsunoda, even though he did do something naughty in the race, spinning Bearman around. Bearman went to overtake him, and Tsunoda decided to move across in the braking zone before the apex of the corner, which meant he had to move back out again. So he turned left as if he was turning into the corner, but of course it was way too early for the corner. So he then had to turn right again before going back around the corner, left. So after he had spun Bearman around. So naughty by Tsunoda. It reminded me a little bit of Prost on Senna at Suzuka 1989, when Bearman wasn't alongside, he was actually behind Tsunoda, so there's a slight difference there. But the same thing happened. Prost moved in way too early for the corner, just because he saw Senna coming up his inside. So he thought, I'm not having that. And he just moved across on Senna. This was very similar here, deciding to turn into the apex of the corner, or deciding to turn into the corner before the apex, which meant he had to then turn right again before turning left again. The only difference being that Bearman was not alongside at all, he was behind, but it still threw Bearman off, and actually Tsunoda didn't make contact, did he? But it pushed Bearman into a spin. As you might expect, he was taken by surprise. Tsunoda suddenly jinking in front of him where he shouldn't have been. So he spun, even though he wasn't touched by Tsunoda. But still, a very good race weekend for Tsunoda, nonetheless. But yeah, Verstappen, he's just very good, isn't he? It's his 68th win. We know he's very good. I would say he's still in my top 5 greatest of all time, I would say, Verstappen. But I don't hero worship him like a lot of people do, of course. Mostly a lot of Dutch fans, not all Dutch fans, but a lot of Dutch fans will never see anything wrong with anything Verstappen does. I think it's only Spain this year where he's done something particularly naughty on Russell, that was. But apart from that, it's not been as naughty a year as last year was for Verstappen. But still, extremely good performance. And now it's like he's the favourite for the title now, as it's going at the moment. Unless McLaren can somehow come back, he's going to be the favourite. How long have I been going? 30 minutes already. I've been talking about the sprint race. I don't even like sprint races, really. I'd rather have a longer main Grand Prix than have sprint races. I'd rather have sprint race than practice, but I'd rather have a longer Grand Prix than a sprint race, because you start to get into the race and then it's over. Too short, and the points are ridiculous. They should increase the gap between each place for the points. So Norris, 22 seconds he finished ahead of his teammate Piastri. Comfortably beat him again, comfortably quicker. This time Norris didn't mess up his qualifying. That's why. Normally it would have, I think Piastri was he 6th on the grid? And normally it would be Norris, earlier in the season it would be Norris 6th on the grid and Piastri 2nd or on pole. And that's why Piastri was able to just drive off and win the races, because he didn't have to worry about the faster Norris, because Norris was trying to fight his way through the field. This time Norris got his quali right, and so therefore he finishes 22 seconds ahead of Piastri. This is the problem I have with Piastri winning the title. I always want the fastest driver to win the title, basically. I know that's difficult to work out when they're all driving in different cars, but when you've got one team and the faster driver is not winning the championship, that's the wrong way round for me, basically. And Piastri has been slower than Norris all year and last year and in 2023. He's been closer to Norris this year, and in a couple of races he was faster. I've always said that Oscar was faster in both Austria and Silverstone throughout the whole race. Just strangely, it was actually Norris that won those two races, due to him managing to hold off Oscar in Austria, and then due to Oscar making an error at Silverstone. Although, as I said before, Lando was faster in the second half of the race at Silverstone. He had caught right up with Oscar before Oscar took his penalty, so he may well have got past Oscar anyway. If Lando loses the championship this year, it will be down to his qualifying in the first third to a half of the season, even though he was on pole in Australia. His qualifying will be what has lost him the championship. And what will have won the championship for Oscar is his consistency, his ability in the first half of the season to be unfazed and just get on with the job. Maybe not as fast as Lando, no, but still able to not make mistakes, basically. However, that seems to have fallen apart of late, and Oscar is now being a bit more like Lando was in the first third of the season. Leclerc, it was a fantastic performance by Leclerc to hold off Lando for so long on the softs. That's just crazy how long those lasted, the softs, for everyone. That seems to have been the way to go. Softs first to get you the track position at the start, but no one was expecting the softs to last as well as they did. Otherwise, they would have probably all started on softs. But Leclerc, fantastic defence from Norris. In the end, though, Norris managed to protect his softs towards the end. So suddenly, with about 5 laps to go, he attacked again, got back past Leclerc and pulled about 8 seconds ahead of Leclerc in the last 5 laps on old, knackered, soft tyres. Very strange. So, but great racing between Norris and Leclerc, made even more tricky because by about lap 20, Norris already had 3 warnings, track limit warnings, and had a black and white flag already. So it was quite something that in fact he had to try and last all the way to the end of the race without making any more mistakes, otherwise he'd get a 5-second penalty. In the end, he was more than 5 seconds ahead of Leclerc. Hamilton, good steady performance, but still behind Leclerc. Isn't he supposed to be the star driver coming in for Ferrari? And yet when he has a good race, he's still behind Leclerc. So still disappointing, basically, for Hamilton. Piastri, well, we've talked about him. He's having a terrible time at the moment. And the speed differential to Lando is showing itself. The speed differential that has always been there. But he probably won't have to worry about repercussions from wiping out both himself and his teammate in a crazy move. Because for some reason the team will probably just brush it off, which is not what they did with Singapore. Anyway, I've spoken about that. The tiny tap in Singapore. Russell started 5th, finished 6th. Was always just a couple of seconds behind Piastri all the way. Hamilton had that problem at the end, didn't he, with his tyre? He thought that a driver would know, so he knew there was something wrong with his tyre or his wheel. He thought it was a puncture. The team was saying it wasn't a puncture. I don't know what it was in the end. Hulkenberg, his first point since Silverstone. Bearman, good in the points again. Alonso, well, he's waiting for next year. Lawson, Stroll, Antonelli, fastest lap, but he got punted off by Sainz, didn't he? Sainz, after the race, was saying, I didn't do anything wrong, but he got a 5-place grid penalty. Of course, having a penalty doesn't mean he did anything wrong, because he got a penalty a few races ago, didn't he? And then it got overturned. But anyway, it was definitely Sainz's fault, that accident. Definitely Sainz's fault. Albon, Ocon, Hadjar, Colapinto, Bortoleto, Gasly. Hadjar had a problem in qualifying, or he retired from qualifying in the first run, didn't he, in Q1. A problem with his car, spun him around. I don't think it was a mistake he made, was it? I think it was an issue with the car. I can't remember. So, what other notes did I leave here? Did I leave any notes about the actual Grand Prix, or are they all about the sprint race? Norris is always bad for track limits, I've noticed. Over the years, he's always one of those first ones to get the black and white flag. Hamilton's normally quite bad for that as well. Of course, for Norris, these all came because he was trying to get past Leclerc, and he was sort of being forced wide a little bit by Leclerc. Nothing illegal as such, but I mean, that was why he was going off track. Because he was going for a move on Leclerc. Leclerc was then obviously standing his ground, and that was forcing Norris off. Not Leclerc's fault. What else? What else did I say? Yeah, 22 seconds, Norris. Despite being held up by Leclerc for virtually the whole race, Norris was still 22 seconds ahead of Piastri at the end. How far would he have been ahead of Piastri? Would he have lapped Piastri? I mean, how far would he have been ahead had he not been held up for 95% of the race by Leclerc? So, I mean, that's slow. Even for Oscar, that's slow, I mean, we know he's slower than Lando, but that's particularly slow. Maybe it's getting inside his head, the whole championship lead, and then every time he makes a mistake, it makes him more nervous about making more mistakes, But McLaren should just let them race. If they touch each other, if they tap each other, so be it. If you want to tell them off, you just get a ruler out and smack their knuckles or something, But just forget all this Saturday detention nonsense. If you tap your teammate, forget about all that. It's ridiculous. But they've set a precedent in Singapore, right? So now they have to do something for this, because this was 10 times worse by Oscar than what Lando did in Singapore. So, but we'll see. We'll see anyway. I don't think they'll do anything. Anyway, so it's, what else? What other notes did I make? Yeah, Norris bad start again. Of course, he lost the place to Leclerc. you could say primarily because Leclerc was on softs, so it made him quicker at the start. But Norris is always slow. He was slow in the sprint race as well, which allowed Piastri to get alongside him at the start. If Norris had had a better start, then he would not probably have been clipped by Oscar in that sprint race, turn 1 incident. How long I've been going 40 minutes now, so I've pretty much ranted as much as I want to about the situation. We'll see what happens with repercussions, as they call it. These daft repercussions, but they have to. I know I keep saying it, but now that it's not that I'm into repercussions, this new word in Formula One. It's not that I'm into repercussions, but if you do it for one, you have to do it for the other, especially if the other one is a far worse incident. Anyway, so Red Bull, they look like they're definitely going to take second in the championship, especially with Tsunoda scoring points now because the Red Bull's better. But look at this. This is just incredible. 14 points now. How well Lando has done to try and make up for that very unfortunate and just incredibly unlucky retirement in Zandvoort. In order to equal their bad luck, in order to level it up, Oscar has to have some kind of mechanical failure as well. They've both had retirements due to their own mistakes, Lando in Canada and Oscar in Azerbaijan, but Lando's the only one that's had a mechanical retirement due to the car. So basically, in order to level up the bad luck, I mean, it doesn't, bad luck is never level between drivers, so I'm not expecting it. I'm not saying it should happen, but that would make it level, nevertheless. Because had Norris not lost those presumed 18 points for second place in Zandvoort, then he would now be leading Piastri in the championship by 4 points, probably 5 points, had Oscar not wiped him out in the sprint race in this weekend. And the gap here, look, the gap there is only, 26 points. That's very scary if Verstappen comes. It'd be terrible if for Lando, if he gets past Oscar, despite having that Zandvoort retirement, he still manages to overtake Oscar by the end of the season, but gets overtaken himself by Verstappen. If I was a Verstappen fan, I would be jumping up and down with excitement. I'd be so excited, more so than obviously 2024 or 2023 or 2022. It would be on the same level as 2021. Building up the excitement. Incredible. I wish I was a Verstappen fan for that reason, because it must be fantastic to be one right now at this point in the championship. Okay, that's all I have to say for this race. I've probably missed something off. I normally do. But it'll probably turn up. I'll probably get to say some things in comments in reply to some of your comments. Right, so thank you very much. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so, or like the video, or leave a comment, or leave a tip on the thanks button below the video. But basically, thank you for watching and thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye for now.